Toilet paper. So important to the modern lifestyle that people were injured during the big Rona pandemic in their pursuit to keep the shelves of shopping centres empty. But what would happen to society if we didn't have it? What would we use to clean up after our ablutions? What would Beyonce replace her red toilet paper with? To paraphrase Albert Einstein, I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but butts in World War IV will be wiped with sticks and stones.
Ted, since the dawn of time, mankind has struggled
to keep himself clean and disease-free. And while not much is known about how our Neanderthal-adjacent ancestors kept their nether regions clear, less soiled than humanly possible, we can comfortably assume that a variety of leaves, sticks and mosses would have been used for the larger pieces of biomass, and water was probably used afterwards for a final touch-up. The availability of certain materials, and even water for hygiene purposes, would have varied wildly for a large chunk of human history. From the people of equatorial coastal regions have an abundance of coconut husk and seawater, to the cultures near the polar regions only having snow and pine cones. I'm sure that at some point literally everything has been used after answering nature's call. We definitely have historical evidence of sticks, rocks, pottery, and of course water being used. Xylospongium, or a tersorium, is a sea sponge on a stick that was used by Romans at least as early as the 2nd century. The tersorium was kept in a bucket of salt water or vinegar for sanitizing, and was used by poking it through holes in the front of the communal marble-topped latrines, and occasionally by gladiators shoving it down their own throats to escape the torment of cleaning yourself with a vinegar-soaked sponge. Cloth, wool and silk were sometimes used by the wealthier people in society in the early AD times, but no one was using paper this early in history. The ancient Greeks used pebbles called persoi, or broken pieces of pottery called ostraka, to scrape away the leftover matter as best they could. In China and Japan, small spatula-shaped pieces of wood or bamboo called kecho or chugi were often used because they were quick and cheap to manufacture, reusable and easy to clean. They're sticks. They're literally called sticks. This name led to arguably the best insult directed at Buddha ever. When one monk asked a Buddhist Chan master, Yunmen Wenyang, what is Buddha? To which Yunmen replied, a dried stick. Despite paper having been invented in China in the 2nd century, there is no evidence of it being used to clean up after ablutions until a scholar in the 6th century named Yan Hui mentioned that he dare not use paper on which there are quotations or commentaries from the 5 classics or the names of sages for toilet purposes. Paper being used for toilet purposes in China was later confirmed to be a regular practice by an Arab traveller in 851 AD, who wrote that the Chinese do not wash themselves with water when they have done their necessity, but only wipe themselves with paper. This would have seemed totally foreign for the traveller at the time, because in the Muslim world, the people would only use water and their left hand to wash after relieving themselves. Unless water was unavailable, in which case they would go the way of the Greeks and use an odd number of pebbles specifically. This act of washing your nethers with your left hand has been hypothesized as the reason that the shaking of hands in greetings is done almost exclusively with the right hand. That, and the whole hidden weapon and conveying peaceful intentions thing. The Imperial Court of China was hooked on toilet paper by the late 14th century, although at this time it was used exclusively by the Imperial Court. Toilet paper soon began to be mass-produced in China towards the end of the 15th century, making it widely available for those that could afford more than sticks, shells and rocks, but still not available for the lowly peasants of the world. Around this time in Europe, most people were using a form of a bidet to wash themselves with water, usually just a wash basin kept next to your bucket in your bedroom. The introduction of toilet paper in Europe really took a publicity hit in the 16th century when French writer François Rabelais complained that it didn't work and wrote that the neck of a well-downed goose is the ultimate cleansing medium. The first settlers on the North American continent took inspiration from the Mayans and indigenous Americans who, among other things, used corn cobs to wipe away their filth as they were abundant and easy to handle. Sailors of the day used a piece of rope hung off the front of the ship called a tow rag to clean themselves after using the heads. With the rise in publishing and the increased amount of print media being produced in the 18th century, toilet paper finally became widely used in the Americas and in Western Europe. although the toilet paper that they used was really just old pieces of newspaper and torn out pages from the books and magazines that people were reading, probably while on the toilet. This actually led to the Farmer's Almanac Company to pre-drill a hole in their magazine to make it easier for people to nail it to a wall in the outhouse. Modern commercially available toilet paper is widely credited to be the brainchild of Joseph Gaetti in 1857. He called his invention of non-splinter-free hemp paper slathered in aloe the greatest necessity of the age. One of the first patents for toilet paper and dispensers was held by a Seth Wheeler, who clearly shows the paper going over the toilet roll like a waterfall, and anyone who puts their toilet paper on the holder the other way deserves to burn for all eternity, you Philistines. Splinters in your butthole was a real problem for the people of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, until the 1930s when the Northern Tissue Company developed a splinter-free toilet paper. Although this was thick and rough paper, essentially the same as what we may put in a printer today. Over the following years, the single-ply toilet paper was refined and made softer to prevent clogs in the increasingly available flushing toilet and plumbing systems. Two-ply toilet paper was finally introduced in Britain in 1942 as a brand that would come to be known as Andrex, the creators of the wet wipes in the 90s. All of this innovation and all of these hardships that were endured by the majority of human history, from shells, rocks and pottery, all the way up to the red-coloured, velvet-textured toilet paper that Beyoncé uses, eventually culminates in what we have today. Toilet paper is a commodity so important to our modern lifestyle that riots ensued, fists were thrown, and supply chains were interrupted during the COVID-19 pandemic. All because we can't live without using 15 sheets of scented 5-ply Super Mega Deluxe toilet tissue per wipe. It's definitely better than a vinegar-soaked sponge and the Buddha though. Happy wiping, kids.